Hello and welcome to Dead of Winter and Dead of Winter the Long Night in well over 3 minutes. This video will be a bit longer than normal because we've got 2 games to cover, and even though they're virtually the same game, there are a bunch of differences I'm going to point out. It is a game for 2 to 5 players. It has no official solo mode. Playing time is around 2 to 3 hours. It is a moderately complex game. When the dead started to walk the earth, you could barely believe it. But thankfully, you had enough presence of mind to cave Old Man with his skull in with a shovel before he bit you. The next few days were a mad panic, with the CDC, military, and civil defense all failing to contain the contagion. A small group of survivors fled to the mountains and now ekes out a living in the harsh, cold landscape. Supplies are short, morale is low, and there is a constant threat from raiders and the undead. And you're also not too sure about that old Raxon facility in town. The game comes with many scenarios, and they mostly require the colony to survive a certain amount of turns while gathering a set amount of resources. If you make it to the end of the game, you will win. Hooray! That is, as long as you've completed your own personal secret goal as well. And that's only if your secret goal wasn't to burn the colony down and dance around in its ashes. Cooperative. Players work together to make the colony a success. Traitor. Except when that comes into conflict with their own personal goals. Narrative driven. Crossroads cards in this game add a lot of story elements. Dice. Many actions require dice, the worst of which is the exposure dice, which can lead to characters being wounded, suffering frostbite, or being bitten by a zombie. Player turn. Turn over a crisis card. This is a task that all players can contribute to during their turns, and each crisis card has a consequence for failure. Players can contribute cards face down to the crisis pile during their turn. Roll action dice equal to the number of characters in your group plus 1. Many actions require a dice to do, and some require no dice at all. Dice-free actions include moving from one location to another, you can spend fuel to drive there safely, or risk rolling the exposure dice. Other free actions include equipping items, trading items, and voting to exile a player from the colony. Actions that use any dice include placing a barricade to slow down the zombies, cleaning the camp to stop morale decreasing, and moving zombies from one location to your location. The main dice actions are attack, where you need 1 dice higher or equal than your attack skill to remove a zombie. This causes a roll for exposure as well, although some weapons negate that. Searching, which requires 1 dice equal or higher than your search skill. You draw 1 card from the location deck and keep it. You can also push your luck and add noise to draw an additional card, but you still only keep 1. You can do this multiple times, but noise attracts more zombies. Once all players have acted, you pay food to feed the colony. See if you have passed the crisis by shuffling all the face-down cards and seeing if you have enough resources. Then you add zombies at locations based on the character's presence and noise. It's now the next turn. Why would you like this game? Dead of Winter is a fascinating game to play with people. It captures the feeling of the zombie survival genre really well. The hidden objectives bring out the selfishness that would be present in a real-world survival situation. For example, one character might be a junkie and need to stockpile medicine for their own use, and this may make them not contribute that medicine to a crisis requiring it. The crossroad cards are also very thematic, and while they might not trigger enough for some people, I find their impact is made better because of that. The single best thing about this game is the companion Crossroads card app. We link it to a speaker and pass the tablet around, and the narration adds a lot of atmosphere to the game. However, some groups will not enjoy the level of distrust and social manipulation in this game. It also has some pretty dark and adult content that might not appeal. And finally, it has some odd tonal shifts that seem out of place. One minute you can find a woman dying in the street, or have a character commit suicide, and the next moment, Sparky the Wonder Dog can use a sniper rifle and vote on a political issue in camp. Dead of Winter versus The Long Night. The Long Night is not an expansion as such, nor is it a second edition of Dead of Winter. It's in a hazy middle ground between the two. It is a standalone game that does not require the original Dead of Winter to play, but can be combined together to make a superset of the game. If you really love this game, it's worth having both. But which one should you get first? The original game has more characters, with a total of 30, and slightly simpler rules. But that's about all it has over The Long Night. The Long Night has improved locations on heavy card stock. It only has 20 characters, but that's enough for any game I've played of it. It also comes with a bunch of additional systems and options. As well as barricades in the original, you also get explosive traps. Helpless colonists are supplemented by hostile colonists. Injuries are not just wounds and frostbite, they now include despair. Improvements are added, which allow you to upgrade the colony in ways you couldn't in the original game. There is also a graveyard region used to track colonists who have died, a raider camp, complete with raiders who add another challenge to the game, and the Raxon facility, with its own scenarios encounter deck, challenges, and a collection of unique and rare zombie types. All in all, The Long Night simply comes with more content and a lot more options for how to enjoy the game. I would only recommend getting the original over The Long Night if you plan to own both eventually, and if you want to ramp up the difficulty and complexity of the game by slowly adding The Long Night later. But if your budget only stretches to one of these games, I'd recommend The Long Night by a long margin. And if you love it, you can always pick up Dead of Winter later. This would also allow you to play Warring Colonies, the next expansion for Dead of Winter that requires components from both games and pits two groups against each other. To see how this world went to hell in a handbasket, I recommend playing Raxon, the prequel game to Dead of Winter. And for another game with hidden traders, social manipulation and survival, I recommend Battlestar Galactica. I'd also like to take this time to thank my supporters on Patreon. Cheers, team!